Listen, what just happened in the last 48 hours is absolutely insane, and I need you to understand the magnitude of what's unfolding right now. We're talking about two completely different paths the Blue Jays could take, and both of them are legitimate game changers for this franchise. Max Scherzer just went on record saying he's not finished. This is a 41-year-old future Hall of Famer who battled through injury, who pitched in a Game 7 with everything on the line, and who's now publicly stating that he wants to come back and finish what he started. That's not the kind of message you ignore, especially when it's coming from someone who's won 3 Cy Young Awards and knows exactly what championship baseball looks like. But here's where it gets really interesting. At the exact same time, Tatsuya Imai, this 27-year-old Japanese pitcher who everyone assumed would follow the typical path to the Dodgers or Yankees, just completely flipped the script. He went on television in Japan and said something that nobody expected. He doesn't want to join Ohtani. He doesn't want to team up with Yamamoto and Sasaki. He wants to beat them. He wants to forge his own path, and he specifically mentioned being open to a place like Toronto where he can build something from scratch. Think about what that means for a second. When was the last time a high-profile Japanese player actively expressed interest in coming to Toronto and doing it differently? This isn't someone looking for the easy route or the comfortable situation. This is a competitor who wants to prove himself on his own terms, and that mentality is exactly what this Blue Jays organization needs right now. Let's start with Scherzer, because his situation is fascinating from multiple angles. After the thumb injury that derailed a huge chunk of his season, a lot of people wrote him off. They looked at that overall ERA, saw a guy in his 40s, and assumed the tank was empty. But anyone who actually watched what happened down the stretch knows that's not the full story. From August onward, when that thumb finally healed, Scherzer was dealing. We're talking about a 3.34 ERA, the cutter was biting again, the command was sharp, and when it mattered most in Game 7, he was throwing 96 miles per hour and giving his team 4 innings of absolute guts. That's not someone who's finished. That's someone who was fighting through injury and still found a way to perform when everything was on the line. Now, the question becomes whether Toronto should invest in that. There's obvious risk involved. You're talking about a 41-year-old arm. Even with the strong finish, there's no guarantee that holds up over a full season. Injuries become more likely. Recovery takes longer. The margin for error gets smaller with every year that passes. But here's the flip side. Scherzer brings something you can't quantify in spreadsheets. Leadership matters. Championship experience matters. Having someone in that clubhouse who's been through the absolute highest pressure situations and knows how to navigate them, that has real value. When you're trying to build a winning culture and convince players like Vladdy and Bo that this organization is serious about competing, bringing in someone like Scherzer sends a message. The front office has to weigh all of that against the financial commitment. If Scherzer is looking for a big multi-year deal, that becomes complicated. But if he's willing to come back on a reasonable 1-year contract, maybe with some performance incentives, that starts to make a lot more sense. You're not blocking younger pitchers long-term. You're adding a veteran presence who can eat innings, mentor the staff, and potentially deliver when games matter most. Now let's shift to Imai, because this situation is completely different but equally compelling. This is a 27-year-old pitcher entering his prime with electric stuff and a competitive fire that you can't teach. His fastball sits in the high 90s with natural rising action because of his low release point. He's got 3 legitimate secondary pitches, and most importantly, he's already thinking about how to adapt his game to MLB hitters. The fact that he's publicly stated he wants to challenge himself culturally and linguistically, that he doesn't need the comfort of joining fellow Japanese players, that tells you something about his makeup. This isn't someone who's scared of the unknown. This is someone who believes in his ability to succeed anywhere, and that confidence is exactly what you want in a starting pitcher. Toronto makes perfect sense for him when you think about it. The Blue Jays have proven they can develop international pitchers. They've got the infrastructure in place. The fan base is hungry for someone to get excited about. And from a business perspective, signing a Japanese star opens up an entirely new market that the organization has been trying to tap into for years. But let's be realistic about the challenges. The NPB to MLB transition is notoriously difficult. Different ball, different schedule, different level of competition night in and night out. Some guys make the adjustment seamlessly, others struggle for years trying to find their footing. You're betting on talent and projection rather than proven MLB production, and that always carries risk. The financial side is interesting too. If Imai is looking for something comparable to what Kevin Gausman got, you're talking about a significant long-term commitment. That's not a decision you make lightly, especially when you've got contract extensions for Vladdy and Bo looming on the horizon. Every dollar you spend now is a dollar that might not be available later. So here's where the Blue Jays find themselves right now. They've got two completely different options sitting in front of them. On one side, you have the veteran who's proven he can still pitch at a high level when healthy, who brings intangibles that go beyond stats, and who wants to be here. On the other side, you have the young arm with massive upside, global marketing appeal, and the competitive mindset that could make him a cornerstone of this rotation for years to come. The optimistic scenario with Scherzer is that you get 30 quality starts from someone who knows how to win, who stabilizes the rotation, and who helps this team get over the hump in year one. The cautious view is that you're investing in an aging arm that might not hold up, and you're using resources that could go toward younger talent. The optimistic scenario with Imai is that you're getting in early on the next great Japanese pitcher, someone who becomes an ace-caliber arm for the next 5 to 7 years, while also expanding the Blue Jays brand internationally. The cautious view is that the adjustment takes longer than expected, the price tag ends up being too high, and you've committed major money to an uncertainty. What makes this even more complex is the timing. The Blue Jays are in win-now mode whether they want to admit it or not. Guerrero and Bichette are entering contract years. The pressure is on to prove this core can actually compete for championships. Every decision has amplified consequences because the window might be closing faster than anyone wants to acknowledge. From a pure roster construction standpoint, there's also the question of how these moves fit with what Toronto has already done. They just committed major money to Dylan Cease. They've got Gausman locked in. Berrios is still under contract. If you add Scherzer or Imai, you're looking at a rotation that's suddenly extremely deep and extremely expensive. Is that the right allocation of resources, or should some of that money go toward addressing other needs like the bullpen or the outfield? The front office has some serious decisions to make, and they need to make them relatively quickly. Scherzer isn't going to wait around forever, and if Imai is legitimately interested in Toronto, other teams are going to start circling once they realize he's open to going somewhere unexpected. The Blue Jays have an opportunity here to be proactive rather than reactive, but that requires conviction and a clear vision of what this team needs to be. What's fascinating is that both of these scenarios represent the Blue Jays trying to be aggressive in different ways. Scherzer is the all-in move, the win-right-now decision. Imai is the calculated risk on upside, the building for sustained success approach. The fact that both options are legitimately on the table shows how fluid this offseason is and how many different directions this roster could go. The reality is this organization needs to make a statement. They need to show Vladdy and Bo that they're serious. They need to give the fan base something to believe in after years of disappointment. Whether that statement is signing a proven winner like Scherzer or landing an exciting young talent like Imai, something needs to happen. Standing pat isn't an option anymore.